Another major milestone for Alex Ovechkin that puts him in the top 10 in yet another category. We'll have that, plus what's the best way to build an Olympic team and the weekend's best games. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. I'm here every Friday with Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. Happy Friday, Rachel.
Happy Friday indeed.
More milestones for Alexander Ovechkin. I almost feel like once a month we could do a show and leave that headline, but pretty rarefied air. He is now top 10 in points all time, and everybody above him is among the game's all-time greatest players.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when he hit that goal record, we knew like that was going to be his thing per se. You know, there's a lot of guys with a ton more assists than him, and I find that fascinating. Just because, like, is that selfishness or is that just confidence? I don't know, but I think. We do know that without a doubt, Alexander Ovechkin is one of the all-time greats and is in good company on that list.
Yeah, no doubt. And maybe he wins the Cy Young Award among the top 10 as far as all-time scorers are concerned. As a matter of fact, he is the only member of the top 10 with more goals than assists.
Yep.
Ahead of him, Sidney Crosby, Mario Lemieux, Steve Yzerman, Marcel Dion, Ron Francis, Gordie Howe, Mark Messier, Jaromir Jagr, and of course Wayne Gretzky at the #1 spot. He just passed Joe Sakic, and he did it in style, a hat trick plus an assist in the game last night.
I think it is kind of funny that he got an assist in the game as well, just to like put a button on that. But you know, a hat trick to get into the top 10 is a pretty dynamic and very Ovi way to do it.
Yes, it is a very Ovi thing, and I think the token assist is almost
token
like
assist,
the
exactly
icing on the cake, right? Here's the Cy Young guy with more goals than assists, and he has to throw in one assist with the hat trick to get into the top 10. But I mean, not that he needs any more, polishing of his resume, so to speak, but it is a very impressive milestone.
It is. And, I think looking at the points and knowing that Crosby is still in the game, et cetera, and that Ovi is planning to retire, at least from the NHL, this is where he's going to end up, essentially. And I think that's a pretty solid end result as far as where he is in the order of operations here.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to play at least one more season to try to have a chance at passing Lemieux. Crosby's still going, so I don't think he's necessarily going to pass him. But hey, 10th overall, first overall in goals, not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all.
So, that is a big milestone. And then there was another more personal milestone yesterday that I think the league may have kind of gotten wrong, and wondered what you were thinking. But, last night in the Washington Capitals game, Dylan Strome found out during the first intermission that his wife had given birth to a baby girl, and he wasn't able to actually go to the birth. Talk to me about that, because I think he really should have gone.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, you never know with birth and how long it takes, and maybe they guessed wrong, or maybe he just wanted to play and that was the agreement or whatever the agreement they had come to as a family in terms of how they were going to handle it. And I certainly respect individual decisions on that front. And if he wanted to play and the family decided it was fine for him to play, that's fine. But I certainly hope in the culture of the organization and in NHL, there is room to be like, nah, I'm going to bounce. I want to be there for the birth of my baby. That's the important part, that the culture and is there to allow for that.
Right. That he has a choice, and then whatever choice he and his wife make is, fine by them as long as it works for them. But congratulations, by the way, to the Strome family on the birth of their third daughter. And, finding that out during the first intermission, though, has to be a little strange.
Yeah. And welcome to the world, Sutton Strome. Excited for you and the family. That, as we know, the Stromes are a large hockey family. So looking forward to seeing how the uncles react as well.
Yes, that is also true. Now, little incident taking place last night also in the game between the Blackhawks and the Kraken. Connor Bedard kind of upset over a hit on Andre Burakovsky that took place in that game. Ryan Lindgren, the Kraken defenseman, knocking Burakovsky out of the game. No penalty called. What are your thoughts about this hit?
Yeah, I mean, certainly did not look good. It's always hard to say, when you have all the slow motion replays and whatnot, and you can't really determine intent, right?
Right.
But I always say, like, impact is more important than intent, in more ways than one. And I think that, clearly, if you're just throwing an elbow without looking and have no concept of what's behind you, like, that's a problem. Like, you should not be doing that. Like, if you can't see where your elbow is going to go, like, you just don't throw it.
Yeah. And the same way that the league mandates that players are responsible for their stick, regardless of, the cause of that stick hitting someone in the face, let's say, for example, it's got to be the same way with a shoulder or an elbow. If that shoulder or elbow ends up striking somebody in the head, there's got to be a punishment for that, because they want to make sure that dangerous play is minimized as much as possible in the game.
Yeah. It's, and we know that he's going to miss at least one game from this. And, like, to have no supplementary discipline when games will be missed, I think, like, that's an issue. That is just an issue that the league needs to address.
It is. And, for all the talk about the Department of Player Safety, and I can put that in air quotes if you like, you got to be consistent, and you've got to do everything you can. Look, hockey is a contact sport. Things are going to happen that you don't want to have happen on occasion, but you've got to do everything you can as a league to protect the long-term health of these players.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely key and extremely important there. And, I think, Connor Bedard had something to say about it, obviously, because they're line mates, right? And, playing together, you want to protect your teammate. And also, a lot of Connor Bedard's success has rested on how Burakovsky has played, right? But even that aside, like, the fact that, a young NHL player has to, like, verbally stick up for a teammate in this situation shows, like, part of the problem, right? Like, he shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, you want him to do that, but he shouldn't have to be the only one doing that. The league should be stepping in, and we'll see whether the Department of Player Safety calls for a hearing of some kind, whether it's in person or on the phone. But I just want to see this cleaned up.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's extremely important. As we've seen, a bizarre increase in the number of injuries this season thus far. I don't think there's, like, something to it in terms of, a vast conspiracy theory to injure more players, but there have been more injuries, it seems like, than normal. this season thus far. And when you see the egregious ones like this, you want to at least fix the situations you can.
Yeah, and no, I don't think there's this vast conspiracy, but I will put this out there and ask you, do you think the compressed schedule because of the Olympics is a contributing factor to the increase in injuries?
I mean, that's hard to say, right? Because each individual event in each individual game is isolated on its own, right? But I think in terms of if you're looking at injuries that are more maintenance related injuries, like muscle strains or a back injury or something like that, that is precipitated by overuse, sure. But if you're looking at something like this, that is a game inflicted injury. So that's a little bit different. And you kind of have to separate the two.
Absolutely. One other piece of news we wanted to get to coming out of Winnipeg. The Jets have granted prospect Brad Lambert permission to find a trade partner. Former first-round pick back in 2022, has only 1 goal and 3 points in only 10 NHL games over the last 3 seasons. Your thoughts about this? He was once considered a potential top 5 pick.
Yeah, it has been really interesting. And I think with some of these guys that are struggling to find their footing in the NHL, a change of scenery can help them. But also some guys just don't pan out, and that's okay too. Like, that's part of the draft process, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you're trying to project what 17 and 18-year-olds will be at 24, 25, etc., that's an art, not a science, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see if anything comes of this. But as of now, Lambert allowed to seek trade options, and wonder what the Jets will get for him if indeed a move is made. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We're getting closer and closer to the Olympic teams being declared, but what's the best way to build an Olympic team? We're going to talk about that and more coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that is why there is Monarch. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. It does all the heavy lifting. You can link your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending. You'll finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. It could even help you notice an inefficient investment allocation or discover a forgotten 401k from a past job. You'll save even more money so you can turn it around and reinvest. So don't let opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code LOCKEDONNHL.
So let's talk Olympics. Lots going on with that. December 31st is the deadline for the initial 25-man roster. And like, for example, Matthew Schaefer, the 18-year-old rookie phenom for the New York Islanders, now in the drug testing program. So obviously Team Canada thinking about adding him. What are your thoughts about the young players, the guys who, the Connor Bedards, should these young guys be going to the Olympics, or are they better off going with more experienced veterans who may not have as many chances to play for their country?
Yeah, I think the big factor here is the amount of time that has passed since NHLers were in the Olympics, right? Because you have this whole swath of guys who've never gotten their shot, first off. And then you have guys that maybe they didn't win the last time around and want their chance to go back and redeem themselves, right? Or you have guys that this is going to be their only chance, right? Because they're close to retiring, but they're at a point where they could make the roster if certain choices are made. And I think that there is this sort of like wait your turn attitude that, especially I would say with Hockey Canada, more than the other federations, USA to some degree. I mean, Bill Guerin's going to do what Bill Guerin does. I don't know how his brain works, honestly, sometimes. But I think that, there is that factor of they have to balance out respect for guys who've been waiting their turn versus purely wanting to win. And is that lack of experience from the young players something to consider? But also, World Juniors is a thing. And like most of these guys have played in World Juniors. So that counts for something too.
Yeah, it does. And I guess the bigger question then becomes like, is the ultimate goal just win, baby? Just put together the best team and win. And so if it's a 19-year-old kid or a 38-year-old veteran, I want to field the best team possible to have the best chance to win the gold. Should age even matter under those circumstances?
I mean, it shouldn't in either direction, right? It shouldn't matter if you think they're too old. It shouldn't matter if you think they're too young, right? It's about putting the right combination together. And that's the other thing too, right? Is the chemistry factor. So if you have guys who are older and maybe have, 6 years or so of playing together on the international stage, what is that worth to Hockey Canada or to Team USA or Sweden or whoever, right? In the opportunities in the World Championships, you have guys who have played in these tournaments while the playoffs are going on, right? And they've put in their time, so to speak, and they've built that chemistry. But there's also that same chemistry with the younger guys who most recently played together on their World Junior teams.
Right.
And you look at some of those lines, especially for Team USA, I would say, with, particular guys who played together on the development team, which is a whole program in and of itself. And the chemistry that's built in that program is pretty strong. So, I find that there's like two different ways of looking at it there with the age versus experience factor.
And maybe I'll add a third. If you're putting together a winning NHL hockey team, you want a balance between older veterans, guys who are in their prime, and younger guys. You want to find that sweet spot. You don't want a team that's too old. You don't want a team that's too young. Could you do the same sort of approach in building an Olympic team where you get a couple of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you get their feet wet, they have more experience getting ready for the next Olympics. You have a handful of 38-year-old people who are doing their swan song and have leadership and experience. And then the majority of your team is sort of, let's say, between 24 and 32 years of age in the prime of their career and probably going to do most of the weightlifting as far as carrying the team to whatever their ultimate result is going to be.
Right. And I also think there has to be a certain level of reward for playing well leading up to the tournament itself, right? If like you have to look at who's hot right now. And, Matthew Schaefer is having a absolutely bang up rookie season. And I think there is a question to be asked about wear and tear for a rookie, right? Because this is just adjusting to being in the NHL, the rigors of the road. And when we look at the timing of the Olympics, that's when, guys could potentially hit a wall, right? And I'm sure that's part of what Hockey Canada is considering, but you absolutely cannot deny what he is doing on the ice so far. And that he deserves to be at least on this long list that by December 31st, they have to cut down.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And then here's the other thing for the Olympics. You're not just building a team with the 25 best players in Canada, for example, or the United States or Finland, whatever. You want to put together a team where guys can play different roles. You need some guys who will back check, who will shut down the other team's best scorers. You need guys who are going to be physical defensemen, not just guys who can score. You need that balance as well. You need to put together a team, not just an all-star team.
Right. And, I think that's putting together any sports team, right?
Yep.
You need players that can fulfill different roles on any sports team, given the way that sport is run, right? And so I don't know that is going to be, a huge factor in terms of approaching it differently than you would any other hockey team. However, I do think that given, once the tournament starts, you cannot add players to the roster. Four Nations was wonky because it was its own thing with its own set of rules that they could make up as they went along, which they did, as we saw. But the Olympics and that's a whole other animal, right? So they're not going to be able to, as is my understanding, replace anybody after the tournament starts due to injuries. So, having guys who are flexible in terms of their roles and can play up and down the lineup is a factor on that front. It's not like you can call up somebody from the minors like you can in the hockey.
Right. Although that's why you have 25 players when only 20 are going to dress for any given game. So hopefully you have a little bit of depth there. It'll be interesting to see what Hockey Canada, Hockey USA, and all the other countries participating in the Olympics are going to do to build their team. And obviously we'll keep an eye on that as we get closer to the deadline. We've got an exciting weekend of hockey ahead. We're going to talk about that and more next on today's Locked On NHL podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Rougiette. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard of them all before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rougiette.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And hey, hockey fans, you could use your knowledge of the game of hockey at FanDuel. Check out the latest odds for your favorite team. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. Head to FanDuel.com to check it out today. So a busy weekend ahead and some very interesting games, and we're lucky here. We broke it down. One big game Friday, one Saturday, and one on Sunday. Let's start with the game tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern time, the Carolina Hurricanes visiting the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I love this matchup because these two teams, are both very good, but for very different reasons, right? And, you have like Connor Hellebuck, a rock star in net. Carolina's goaltending has been I think mixed with Freddie Anderson not really performing that well, but Kochetkov doing very well in his game so far. I think that is a huge factor in this. But with the potent offense and the system that Carolina has going up against this Winnipeg Jets defense and goaltending, I find that to be a fascinating matchup.
Yeah, it is very contrasting styles in that sense. And Winnipeg seems to be kind of coming around after a not so great start.
Yeah, and both teams, like I said, have a potent offense going on, with Carolina having the second most goals for per game in the league right now. Winnipeg not too far behind in sixth in the league, and then they have very similar defenses too in terms of goals allowed. So it's like where is this going to meet up, and who will come out on top in the end is going to be fun.
Yeah, should be a good one. Now, Saturday, we will start with a late game out on the West Coast. The Vegas Golden Knights visiting Anaheim. Is this Anaheim Ducks team for real this year?
Well, that's what's so interesting right now about the contrast between these two teams, because Vegas Golden Knights, everybody thought just, you set it and forget it, right? They're just on autopilot and they're going to make the playoffs and everything's great. And the Ducks are a team that we knew would be better this year, but we didn't know how much better. And, they started off with a bang. They had some mixed results for a little bit, but they're kind of back on track now with 4 wins in a row leading up to this matchup, whereas Vegas has only won 1 game out of their last 5. And I feel like this is a really important opportunity for Vegas to kind of get back on track here.
Yeah, and if you look at the standings, yes, I know it's early in the year. We're only in November, but Anaheim is in first place in the Pacific Division,
Yep.
1 point ahead of Vegas, 2 points ahead of both Seattle and LA. So the standings are really tight. But, first place in the division for now is kind of on the line with this game.
It really is. And I think that's a fun aspect to it. And the fact that, the Ducks have kind of chosen a system here of draft and develop from within. We know they sometimes jettison those draft picks, but they've settled on a really exciting young group of players right now. And I think that, one of the biggest surprises for me this season is how well Chris Kreider has fit in amongst this group of players, right? And so that's kind of what makes them fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be a great game. And then Sunday evening, the Colorado Avalanche, still only 1 loss all year in regulation, visiting the Chicago Blackhawks, 10-6-4. Are the Blackhawks for real?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the Blackhawks absolutely have gotten off to a very good start overall for them. They're, I believe, 4th in the division right now. And so I think that obviously the Avalanche are a machine at this point. And I do think, the Blackhawks have started to falter a little bit. They haven't won in 3 games, but the talent that they do have is there, and it's going to shine through at various points during this season. And I do think they're obviously going to end up much better off than they did last year, but up against this incredible Colorado Avalanche team that, I think is just overperforming in some ways, but deservedly so.
They're almost perfect. I mean, it's unbelievable that they only have 1 regulation loss all year. I did see them when they played the Islanders last week. They are very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, note one chink in their armor, so to speak, it's their power play, which is not in the top 10 in the league, and the Blackhawks penalty kill is very good. So I think there's something to that, but then again, you just don't want to be in the box at all if you're the Chicago Blackhawks in this game.
Sound advice there. Stay out of the box. You feel shame if you're in the box. So we'll leave it at that. But Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You could find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks for watching and listening to the Locked On NHL podcast.